The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. We have very active lifestyles. It's not all wandering the countryside aimlessly or scaring passing motorists. And we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Still Toking with. Well, you already know who I am. And I got to say, I am super psyched about tonight's show. Super psyched. I've been looking forward to this show for a few months now. Yeah. But the man who puts flash and flashy, Mr. Jeffrey Marks.
Good evening, everybody out there. Hello, my friend. You know, I always felt among the people we would have on here that my background would be the most original and the most colorful. And I think I've met my match tonight.
I would say you definitely have met your match tonight.
our guest tonight, you can't point to any part of his life and not go, wow. So let me say, wow. Our guest tonight is John Alite.
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, which I'm sure is extremely busy, to hang out and chat with us a little bit. You know, real quick, we just want to send our well wishes out to our other co-host, Mr. Jeff Holman, who had a passing in his family this past week and had to deal with some personal things this evening. But don't worry, folks, he'll be back next week, I think.
No, he'll be back. He'll be back. Or I'll kick his ass.
Oh yeah. No, he'll definitely be back. But yeah. So like I said, I've been super psyched about this because tonight's show is proof that you can do some of the worst things in life and head down the wrong roads, but always have redemption and make a positive impact on life with changes. It's just, yeah, like the show notes, I'm blown away. I'm totally blown away right now.
No, it's a miracle. It's a miracle for someone to be able to walk down a dark path and turn around and not just walk back the other way, but then help other people. That's the miracle.
Right.
That from not so good stuff comes all this wonderful stuff. Is your head big enough yet, John, or should we do more?
Yeah, I think you can keep going there. No. So,
Yeah, I've had dates like that. So, sir,
I got my cat. My cat's even moving up, like shaking her head. She's like,
for our friends out there who are watching and listening, where were you born? What was your background as being a youth?
I was born. That's like my cousin Vinny. We're all youths. Remember that?
Yeah.
I chose my words carefully.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I was born in Jamaica Avenue, Jamaica Hospital, Queens, in a little area called Woodhaven, on the borderline of East New York, Brooklyn, and the Queens borderline.
That's where I was born, in East New York.
Yeah. I went to Frank K. Lane High School. So that was, next door. We'd hang out in the cemetery, actually. When you think about it, I don't know what we were thinking about back then. So
it was a place not to get caught.
Yeah.
That's what you were thinking of.
Yeah.
Most times it's true, though.
Yeah.
So we've been dancing around, walking the dark path, et cetera, et cetera. How did that start for you? How did you start to get involved with things that are not so nice?
And one of the things I try to, because I do a lot of talking with young kids now, and I try to not make excuses for my past so they don't make excuses for their path. And, I just was raised in it. My father was friends with serious gangsters, Lucky Luciano's cousin, whose name was also Charlie Luciano, a made guy, Gambino family. My baseball coach, his father was the neighborhood boss in the Gambino family, Ruggiano. His son Albert was my baseball coach. My little girlfriend in grade school, her father and uncle were Lucchese made guys. So it was just around me when I grew up as a kid. And I just thought it was, normal, natural world. And I walked into it as a young baby. I was impressed with it. And, I was raised thinking it was a great thing.
Right.
I can relate to that because we talked off camera that growing up very close to where you were, and by in some relations in some fashion, I've known some of the same people. And then certainly in show business, if you work in any kind of a nightclub, you'll meet these people because they're your bosses.
Yeah.
When I was first coming up, you worked in a nightclub, you knew these folks and they knew you. And happily for me, they liked me. They liked my singing, and I got a free pass to just get waved at.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yep.
So I don't want to belabor, but obviously this began to escalate.
Yeah, you start hanging around with certain guys that actually in that life, I don't know if all guys did, but I stayed with a lot of older guys as a kid.
Yeah.
So, they're mentoring you in the criminal world. And even when they're not mentoring you, you're being mentored because you're watching their movements, their actions, their face expressions, how they deal with people as they're talking to them, who they're intimidating without speaking to them. And you're picking up on these little things and different innuendos that are going on in conversations without any words sometimes.
Yeah.
And you just, you're being schooled without realizing you're being schooled.
You learn a very specific kind of swagger.
Exactly. And
right.
I used to talk about that all the time. You can go and buy a Halloween costume, but a lot of us, we joke on the street when we're in that life. A lot of it is acting. Even when you didn't want to hurt somebody, you had to act like you were, you had that scary look or that intimidating swagger, or just the way you look at them, your eyes, or any of that is just it's a good acting job. So you're getting through the life without having, at points, instead of hurting them, you're intimidating where you don't have to, and to get your point across to whatever issue you have at that time.
Okay. So, I mean, I was reading that growing up, you were actually good friends with John Gotti's son, John A. Gotti.
Yeah.
So with that, it kind of helped. Did that kind of help you become, I guess, an associate to the crime family?
What I think happened was we made a good team, whether it's Batman and Robin or Abbott and Costello, or any couple of guys that get together, and whether in comedy or crime. He had that last name, and I had the ability to make money, and I was violent, and we used each other. We played off of each other. So I think that's what made us successful in the street, and earning capacity and getting things done. Between the two things, you mentioned that last name in our area, it carried a lot of weight. And and if it didn't, or if they crossed the line thinking it didn't, then I would have hurt them. So they found out both ways that we were capable of maneuvering people on the street.
Right. And you said, with his last name and your violent temper, I guess at the time, you were able to hurt people. And this is all public knowledge. So it was estimated that you had shot between 30 and 40 people, beat over 100 with a baseball bat, and actually murdered 7. Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. It's like, even when I talk about it or anybody talks about it, it's almost like we're talking about somebody else. And I mean, those are big numbers. I know that. But in a 30-year career on the street, really isn't.
No, I was about to say,
yeah,
in 30 years, that's not all. I mean, we are not, folks, we're not in any way saying it's okay to beat people up or shoot people or hurt people or even intimidate people. But if one is in that business, the numbers we're talking about are not very large.
And the reason I actually brought that up is because normally something like that would make you a made man. But because I guess you don't have a lot of Italian background, you were ineligible to become a made man. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Being Albanian and being raised in that world, I ran the streets. I mean, guys would call me the boss on the street, call me the sheriff on the street. I had all kinds of nicknames because, no different than Jimmy Burke from Goodfellas. He was Irish. He was never a made guy, but obviously he wields and yielded respect because of his violence, because of his power, because of his money-making ability, and because of his attachment to the Lucchese family. No different than me to the Gambino family. So you're a representative of that flag, of the Gambino family. So disrespect that flag, and you're going to get hurt, killed, beat, batted. No different than me. I was also a number that brought somebody else's stats up, because over the years I was battered myself. Over the years I was stabbed up a couple of times myself. Over the years I was shot. So, just the way my numbers totaled, other people's numbers totaled too. We're going back and forth at each other. And when you expose yourself to that street life, unlike what people think, you're getting it too. You're not just going to walk unscathed unless you're a faker on the street, because you're exposing yourself constantly. And there's a lot of rough guys out there. There's a lot of fake guys. I mean, but there's a lot of rough guys too that are very capable of, and I'm not talking about 6 guys jumping one guy stuff. That's, to me, that's cowardly. There's guys out there that'll fight 2 and 3 guys by themselves, and they'll go challenge guys with guns and knives when they're alone. There's a handful of real tough guys out there over the years in every generation.
I use the word, I've always wanted to ask this question. I had to be streetwise growing up in Brooklyn and being in show business. You have to learn, because if you don't learn, it could be dangerous if you don't learn the proper respect. but having observed it and observed it and observed it, I've never learned how to be purposefully intimidating. But the guys who did what you do, it's almost a genius talent for doing it. And I'm saying this with respect. Is that something that was just in you and came out, or was that you observing the landscape and figuring it out for yourself, or did someone teach you?
No, I was taught mostly all this stuff. Like I would watch John. I'm talking about the father.
Yeah, senior.
I would teach him without a word coming out of his mouth how he intimidated people, how he demanded respect. So you're learning, you're watching him and you're learning. And then I taught friends of mine that hung around, but they weren't tough guys. They weren't particularly intelligent street guys. And I'm not talking about book smart, but I'm talking about, as far as the street. Yeah. But you would teach them, hey, put on a black suit, put a cigar in your mouth, don't talk. Don't say a word. Stand with your hands crossed across the front of your lap and just walk in with me. And I would walk him in a restaurant or a bar purposely and walk out. And he would say, what did we just do? They would ask. And I says, because you walked in with me, automatically they think you're doing the same thing I'm doing. You're involved in what I'm doing. They're going to spread the word that I brought somebody strange around. And that's going to do the trick for what I want to do. Then when I see somebody, they'll ask me, who was that guy? I says, oh, he's a guy that's hanging around with us. He basically does the same thing I do. Even though the guy never cracked an egg, we could. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, everybody believes this guy's somewhat of a gangster, but he's not. And it's very easy to fool, the public as far as, they're unwittingly don't really understand, but they're unwittingly passing that rumor around for you. So there's a way to manipulate the street.
Okay. Good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. While all this was happening, before you had your moment of clarity, shall we say,
right?
Did it ever eat at you a little bit that what you were doing wasn't good?
It's funny, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Not when I went home and counted the money. No, I just went home and counted the money, and I said I'm successful. And at the end of the day, you obviously you're building your ego up. And that's the downfall of a lot of gangsters and street guys, because you don't know, you start believing in the press. In other words, you're not humbling yourself and being happy for what you got. And you just continue moving forward and you want more and more and more. And that goes not just the money, you start losing track of that, but you want the power. You want the, when you walk into an area or a club or a bar, the way everybody opens up doors for you. And it's all fake, don't get me wrong, but you're buying into it yourself at the time.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume the lighter stuff started when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
What was your age when things became more intense?
Growing up in the schoolyard, and I grew up in Jamaica, like you said, in East New York, and hanging around the schoolyard or up in the park, Highland Park or Forest Park, you were always witnessing somebody getting stabbed up or shot. And, it was kind of normal, especially back then. And when I was growing up in the 70s and, obviously the late 60s, 70s, that, you're witnessing this stuff. So it was nothing to us. We would, it was just like watching a baseball game or playing handball, or anything. It was just regular. You're so accustomed to it that when I started moving around and batting people or, hitting them over the head with a stick or anything else, it was just normal because I just seen it so often that I thought, all right, it's just, this is what it is. This is life. And, as you kind of dehumanize anything you're doing. So there's no real attachment. It's just, ways to get to the means of what you're trying to do, whether it's make money, or, just intimidate somebody, like I said, or hurt somebody because somebody told you to, depending on who you're hanging around with at the time.
Right.
And again, I'm watching guys, I'm taking rides with older guys. One of them was my cousin, and he told me, give me a ride. And he runs in a bar, and I don't know what he's doing. And then I hear a gunshot, and he comes out with a bag full of money. He robbed the bar, he robbed the drug dealers, and he gets in the car. So unwittingly, I'm involved in things at the beginning and then it becomes just second nature to me. It was nothing to do these things.
Were you ever around for some of the stuff that was happening in Little Italy back in those days?
Yeah, we always went. We were always in Little League since I was a kid, and I was in the lower south side of the Bronx with my father. I was down in Delancey and Rivington because my father grew up there. So he would take me down there. My father was involved with gambling, bookmaking. He was a street fighter. He was a boxer. He wasn't a gangster or a killer like that, but his friends were. All of his friends were. My uncle grew up, and my father grew up with Vito Genovese and those guys. And so, my exposure to gangsters on a constant basis, whether it was in Italy or the Bronx or, East New York, Brooklyn, was just routine. You're involved, you see, you hear, you watch. Guys are telling you, who that is, and you meet a million gangsters that were big names, from North Jersey on, and you're looking at them like the way kids look at baseball players or football players.
Okay. So we had a couple of comments come in, but a gentleman, Dave wants to know, did you meet John Gotti Jr. on the street? That's first question. And was John Gotti still boss? Oh, no, sorry. Was John Gotti boss, or was Paul still alive?
No, I met John Gotti Jr. early on. He went to a junior high school with a kid from our neighborhood that they were friends with. He introduced me to him. And Paul was the boss at that time, not John Gotti. But I met John probably in about 82, maybe even 81, but around there, 81, 82. And the son, I met him when he was about 16. But prior to him, the Ruggianos were the boss. So Albert Ruggiano was a boxer with me in the gym with Jerry Cooney and David Sears and Patty Esposito and Billy Estrema. We all fought at the Lost Battalion Hall on Queens Boulevard. There was all gangsters there. So anywhere we went, we were exposed to gangsters. And Fat Andy Ruggiano, Albert's father, was at all our baseball games. I'd be in his house having lunch, as a young kid, because his son would bring me home as a kid. He was our coach. He was a couple of years older than us. So this was normal routine for me, all this stuff. I didn't look at these guys like, like Fat Andy was kind of like a grandfather figure to me, I guess.
You're welcome, Dave.
I could see those baseball games, You get the umpire behind the plate. Strike one. Look over. I mean ball. No, really.
Bombo. Yeah, you want to laugh, Ben? There was a guy, Bombo, right? He was an umpire. And we used to go crazy because when we played against Andy's, Albert's teams, because prior to that, we played against him. And just what you're saying, you're joking, but it was true. He wouldn't call anything against Albert. So, we're saying, what the hell is this guy? When we're young, we don't really understand yet because we're like 7, 8 years old. By the time I'm 10 and 11, he's my coach now. Now we know what's up, because, I'm at his house all the time. And he used to laugh because Albert was a very charismatic guy. He just lost his life about a year ago. But he was a very charismatic guy, and he knew how to maneuver kids, and he was a great ball player. He loved kids. He has a couple of kids of his own. And, listen, Albert was a tough guy, too, a legitimate tough guy, good with his hands, everything. And unfortunately, we got involved in his lives. A lot of guys lost their lives early because of the involvement in the street, whether it's drugs or getting killed. Going to jail for life. And that's why I'm talking against life all the time, honestly, because I know I could save some kids' lives.
Right. And we're going to get into that.
Absolutely.
Right now we're getting into the dark side of things to kind of set the base for, the transition.
And I have to say, again, growing up in Brooklyn, no, it's not all about me. I just want to explain for those of you, Brooklyn's the 4th largest city in the country all by itself, and Queens right next door. What we're describing wasn't something extraordinary out of the myths, and we saw this every day. We observed it. Those who had nothing to do with it, but we observed it. It was in the papers. We talked about it. This was dinner table talk when I was growing up, and not necessarily in a bad way.
Yeah. No, it's no different than growing up in Compton and seeing the gangs and seeing the money and things. It's normal.
But it's a very specific kind of, I don't mean Italian culture. I mean just
Right.
a culture of its own that we respected, observed, sometimes cooperated with when it was necessary. And I entertained for these people. So,
Right.
not necessarily sometimes privately, they'd ask, would you come? Yes, I will come do that for you. Absolutely. Don't think twice.
So, all right.
So I'm just trying to explain for everybody else, the 1.5 people who are watching us.
So
this is not.
I got a funny story for both of you, but more so for John. So, like I said backstage, my first wife was Italian. My second wife now is Italian. So I adopted her 3 children, 2 of whom are girls, both in cheerleading. We used to do all these cheerleading competitions up in Springfield, Mass. Her family owned a restaurant, full Italian family, same kind of atmosphere. We were eating dinner there one night after a comp, and I asked her cousin, I said, can I use the lav, the men's room? And he said, well, the public one's all the way down those stairs, but go around the bar, don't go up the stairs. I said, okay. He said, go around the bar, second doorway, use that bathroom. Cool. Me and my 2 sons, I walk around the corner, and there's the huge painting of the French nude bike race hanging on the wall. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I go in the bathroom, I step into the stall, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is kind of awkward and weird because the urinal is all the way down on the floor, but it runs up past my head. Okay. Try to turn around. I couldn't turn around in the stall. I had to back out of it. And when I turned, I looked. The entire room was the same color epoxy, and it had a 4-inch drain in the center of it. And I went, oh, fuck. I don't think I like this bathroom. I went back to the table and told my wife. She said, I told you my family didn't like people. And I was like, oh, my fucking God. Like, I really felt like I was in a kill room.
Yeah, well, yeah, I for the people who don't know, I was thinking, well, it's not maybe just for urine, maybe it's for blood too, so it gets down that drain.
Well, because I was like, I've never seen a urinal that tall. But the thing that gave it away was the same color epoxy, literally floor to ceiling, and then that 4-inch drain in the center.
It washes off really well.
I was like,
yeah.
I was like, holy fuck. Yeah. I love you, honey. So I figured, coming from your background, you'd get a kick out of that.
Yeah, that taught you not to fight with your wife, I guess.
Pretty much.
Help our friends who are watching to understand another side of this too.
Right.
It is legend in show business that if you asked any of us and the people who came before me, working in clubs, working in Vegas, working wherever, who were your bosses? If they're going to be honest, our bosses were these people.
Yeah.
I have never heard an entertainer say one bad thing about these people being their bosses. They took good care of us. They respected us. They loved show business, loved the people in it, as long as you were smart enough to understand who you were and who they were. It's a whole different side to these people who were often good husbands, good fathers, good sons, good brothers, good uncles. Can you help the word dichotomy is like 2 completely different sides of the same person. Was that your experience, John?
Yeah, it's hard to really explain because people think, I was raising my kids and I never hit my kids once in their life. And people are like, you never hit your kids? I said, no, never. Not even tapped them and you slapped them in the butt or in the face or pulled their hair. No, nothing. So, they don't expect that because you're so violent on the street, but it's kind of like a switch. It's an on and off switch. And, actually I got nicknamed from one of the sister-in-laws of the Gottis. They used to call me Flip. And they'd say, well, this guy's just so easygoing. Then all of a sudden I go the other way. So I don't know. It's something that we're raised, I guess, a certain way that if you do something completely disrespectful, you're not going to get one. You should have known better. And things happen. If you're polite, we're polite. And you try to be, that was kind of the way I was raised. So I mean, my schooling was that way. I don't know other guys, but my schooling was, go in, be a gentleman, dress like a gentleman, tip well, be polite to everybody. But if they disrespect you, they do something wrong, they put their hands on somebody in your family, you're going to hurt them bad or kill them. I mean, this was the normal thinking pattern of the way I was raised. When you step back and you think about it, you start trying to analyze it psychologically. I'm not really sure. Like, people ask me all the time, did you lose sleep over anything? And I really didn't. I mean, one of the things during the trial was that the prosecutor was asking me after we killed somebody was, what'd you do after that? And I didn't understand the line of questioning. This is how you turn your brain, I guess. And I'm saying, nothing, no big deal. I went to eat. And he says, well, what'd you go eat? And I'm going through my meal. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck does this guy care what I ate for? But, not realizing they're trying to show how detached we are, like it's nothing to us. So
right.
It's true. But, on the other flip side, I can tell you people that, that own funeral parlors, they deal with bodies day and night too. How do they do that? And they're not killers, but they're doing their job. And so to us, it was our job. It was just, you're not going out just, and there's the difference for people who don't understand. You're not going out and hurting somebody that's walking down the block with their dog and you just decide to kill them. That's a serial killer. We're hurting and killing each other, guys that were involved in the street world. And I think when you go outside of that, to me, I didn't do that. I didn't like to do that. I didn't rob armored cars because I wouldn't kill that guy. He didn't sign up to this life. So, you make a set of rules for yourself. Maybe other guys don't follow my rules, but those are my rules.
Let's move this forward a little bit because I want a good 20 minutes about after.
Right.
So
just before we jump ahead, because
sir.
you keep bringing up the entertainment side of things, and John being part of the reality side of things. So, John, a lot of people watch The Sopranos and Mobland and things like that. Where they depict the gangsters and this. How close are they really telling that story?
One of my biggest frustrating things I think are there's so many mob guys or street guys that are completely full of shit. And, and I call them out on it all the time because if you could sit here and ask their resume, they don't have one. They really 95% of the guys are full of shit. They follow 5% of the guys. 5% are the workers, meaning the guys putting in the hard work, the lifting, the hurting guys, killing guys. And the other couple percent are the earners. And the rest are just sheep following. But they're so good at bullshitting that they got the public believing this is still the 70s and the 80s, or the 60s, 70s, 80s in my era. But it's
things have
like
changed.
that anymore. Yeah, because I know a lot of gangsters still, obviously. And it's so watered down, and they stay with such, for better lack of words, such fucking punks. They never did anything. They just walk around like they did because they know that it's over. Not in my era, you didn't watch yourself. You get killed. You get stabbed up like I did. You get shot like I did. I didn't just give it. You got it too. So, now those consequences aren't the same. So they all fake. They all talk too much. They all act like idiots. And this, the handful of the old timers are still out there. They're legitimate. They know the old world, the old way of that street world. And to me, it's gone. It's nowhere near the same as it used to be.
Right.
And I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah. All right. So, Jeffrey, now I'll let you move forward.
Okay. So all of this stuff happened and it got worse and worse and you got older and older. And then it came crashing down on you. Can you briefly tell us what happened, what brought you to trial and how you got there?
Well, I'm going to use the word because I don't like using the word rap, but I use the word cooperate. I cooperated, but I didn't cooperate and betray people. So when I went on the run, I heard there was going to be indictments, and I left my family behind. I left my money behind. That was worth millions. I owned a parking company that was taken from me with $17.6 million. I had a nightclub making $3 to $4 million. I had an estate that was valued at about $10 million a couple of years ago. I had, 14, 16 houses, buildings in Florida, 2 glass shops. I owned after hours. I owned a lot of stuff. So I left it all, went on the run, went to about 22 countries, ended up eventually in Brazil. Before that, I was in Africa. I was in the Ivory Coast. I was in Cuba. I lived all over Cayman Islands, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina. I mean, I was on International's most wanted list, Interpol's. So when I was away, I was in a concentration camp in Brazil for 2 years, 8 months. And while I was sitting there, two crime families, Gambino and the Bonanno family, bosses down, were all trying to cut deals, cooperating, pointing fingers at me, captains doing open arguments at their trial saying that I was the killer, I was the rogue, I was the loose cannon. And meanwhile, I'm protecting these guys, and they're all cutting deals behind me. So the best way I can tell anybody is look at the timeline, where I was sitting and where everybody was hitting headlines about me. And with the trials and the minutes, and 68 guys and better were cooperating against me. And I said, what the fuck am I doing? I'm protecting these guys. I left my family. I'm sitting in a concentration camp. These guys are home sunbathing, and they're giving me up. So, and these guys are the made guys, are the bosses and captains and underbosses and concierges. And this ain't my, my version of it. Anybody can read about it and look at the timeline. And the only analogy I can use is if you're married and your wife is sleeping with 7 guys and she's cheating on you, if I take a woman, I don't think that counts as me cheating on her. So when they gave me up, it was over. I came home and I says, okay, F this life, F them. I stood in those penitentiaries for, close to 3 years. I didn't have to spend one day there. I didn't have to lose all my millions. I didn't have to go for a couple million in lawyers. I could have just been a cooperator from day one and never did any of that. If I wanted to cooperate, why would I run? Why would I sit in those jails for close to 3 years, shitting in a hole on the floor, letting it, it was raining inside with 58 guys in a 12-man cell. I mean, I wouldn't do it. You wouldn't say in those concentration camps. It just takes common sense for people to say, wait a second, that's not the storyline I heard. And so now I give it to them and I tell people, well, just look into it. Look what was going on. Look if the Bonanno family boss wasn't wearing a wire. Look if a captain in the Gambino family in Florida didn't do an opening statement saying I was the rogue, the loose cannon, and the killer. I'm just a bookmaker. I mean, these are facts that when I just finally said that's enough with this life. Everybody's full of shit. I thought everybody was doing what I was doing as far as putting in the work, getting stabbed up, getting shot like me, and that's not the case. So I just had enough at that point and said, okay, you guys cheated on me. It's over. And that's when I turned it around.
And when you turned it around, was it like, oh, shit, maybe I shouldn't have done all this stuff? Or
No,
okay.
I cut you right there, Jeff.
Yeah.
I was all in. I didn't give a fuck. When
Gotcha.
the prosecutors and the FBI and everybody came to me and they said, if you lie, you're going to get a life sentence. Because you got assigned to a life sentence. So people would say what they want. You don't know what you're going to get. And, I wasn't in New York. My case was out in Florida. So where they hammer people. And, when they asked me that, I says, oh, no. You fuck me, I'm going to fuck all yous. There's no there was no, maybe with me. And the people asked me, well, why didn't you go in witness protection? Why the fuck would I go in witness protection? They all gave me up. Let them go in witness protection. I never had a fear factor of the street. Anybody that knows me, I survived those Brazilian jails by myself. I survived in the street by myself, and I still survive by myself. And I just looked at it like, all right, I just wasted about 40 years of my life being an idiot, believing in a life that I grew up with that just wasn't what I thought it was. And not only, but, maybe at the beginning, I was a little young and naive, but as you get older, you're seeing the writing on the wall that these guys are full of shit. They're not my real friends. And, people are shooting each other in the back of the head for $1 bill. People are shooting each other in the back of the head because this guy's ratting on that guy and that boss is giving up his mother. I mean, this is the reality. I'm telling people something that Lucky Luciano, I use that name all the time, was a rat. Does anybody know that? At 16 years old, he was a rat. He got caught selling heroin and his excuse was I was only 16. So, I started to understand the double dipping, where It was good for them when they want to do it. You know, like this captain I'm talking about did the opening statement. Nobody called him a rat. He got a life sentence. He just came home. They let him out on compassionate release or whatever nonsense. But I don't care what he did in their words. And I don't care if he cooperated, don't. It doesn't matter to me. I got a different life. But what I don't like is the way they sold it in the media, where they made it sound like I betrayed anybody. I didn't betray anybody. You guys slept around without me, and then I slept around. So, you know, it's very simple. The analogy is very simple for people to understand.
At what point in your voyage here did you feel you wanted to help others? What turned your page there? Because you could have just did what you did and led a quiet life. You've instead written books and you talk to people, you help youth. What motivated that part of you?
Soul searching. Like, I ruined my life. What am I doing? I was a full ride scholarship baseball player. I could have had a different life. I had pro tryouts. I was educated. I went to school. I wasn't the smartest guy in school, but I passed the Series 7 test as a stockbroker. I started reflecting on, you know, I had children. What the heck did I do to my life? Why would I, you know, I wanted to be around good people. And one of the victims' daughters reached out to me when I was in prison, started talking to me, started writing me, asking for answers about what happened to her father, why he got killed. We built a relationship. She wanted to write a letter in to the judge for a lighter sentence for me, and I didn't allow her to do it. She wanted to come to court. I didn't allow her to do it. And I said if I ever allowed her to do it, people would have thought I manipulated her for a lighter sentence. So I didn't allow her to do it. When I came home, we started talking, and I decided to try to go see some of the victims of people and people I hurt. A good majority actually made up with me that didn't pass away or die. But you know, it was a handful that didn't want to have nothing to do with me, and I get it. And then when I was in prison, there was a guy who had life that jumped a guard that was a veteran, and I jumped in to help the guard. So I think I made that decision from prison with her incident and with the guard's incident. And then I just came home and I said, I'm going to go back to God, church. I never found God before that. And I said, I'm going to start back in church and change my life around, do the right thing, and try to start helping people with the knowledge I have. And at first, people thought I was full of shit. He's just doing it because he's on parole and it's a con job. And you know, the haters are going to talk nonsense. But when they see me keep doing it, and then they see me in church, people would see me in church every week, and people would see me, you know, feeding the homeless, and it was me going to give gifts at Cancer for Kids at hospitals. I think they started to say, wait a second, because different people were seeing me. And then, you know, as I was in the media more and more, people said, wait a second, this guy really means what he's doing. And, you know, I'm not getting paid for it, so what's my angle? And then eventually it started resonating with the media, where I was in cover of magazines, and I was a cover of Life magazine in Germany recently, and Italy on the cover, in Extra in Milan. And I just started doing all kinds of work and lectures and talks and school appearances, and it resonated around the world. So, and I came where I'm at now. And I just say that, you know, God may put me on the path, and the back stuff that ever happened, I got no animosity. I mean, I would hang out with anybody in that old life that changed their life. I'd sit down, have a drink with them, have a coffee with them. I really don't care whether they cooperated against me or not. There's a lot of guys I talked to that did. People are shocked to see me with them. And I'm like, whatever, that life's done for me. I really don't care. I'm not living in that past.
I like that.
What motivated you to write the first book?
A lot of money, and I wanted the truth to come out. You know, that I was loyal to the life. And don't get me wrong, I get why some of the guys did what they did too, because there was a ton of guys going against them. I get it. I got no anger towards them, but I didn't want the history of what happened to be fake. I wanted it to be the real history, what happened. Not, you know, my version or their version or anybody's version, but the reality by timeline. You know, if you give the timeline and if you give the rules of our life, the rules of our life is there's no excuse to sit down with any kind of law enforcement. We know that. We all know how that works. There is no, whatever. I only had a tea with them, or I only this or only that. That's not. It's a death sentence. We all know that. That's part of our life that we signed up for. But after that, I just said, listen, I don't blame any of these guys. Whatever excuses they got for whatever, that's their life. Do whatever you want. But my version of it is just being totally honest. When they betrayed me, I said, F them, just like I would do with anybody. You're not going to fuck me and me not fuck you back. And you're not on my side. I guess you're against me. This is the way it is. But the one thing I could say is my history is anybody that really knows me is I don't care if there's 10,000 guys against me. I'm alone. I'm good enough alone. I don't need to have that group. So, and that's my personality. It's always been my personality. I think the weak guys need the groups. So I never did.
Wow.
I've got 37 questions. I don't know which one to ask first.
Right? I mean, I'm just, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm just blown away by this. So I'm just like, wow, I'm taking it all in.
You know what's funny? You get guys that'll say, like, listen, I'm not the toughest guy in the world. Don't get me wrong. I caught some bad beatings. I got hit by cars. They baseball batted the hell out of me. But it's just part of that life, because you'll get guys turning my words around all the time. Oh, he thinks he's this, he's Superman. And I never said that. I caught some bad beatings. I mean, if you're out in that life, if you're real to it, in jails, out of jails, listen, I was a fighter. Everybody knows that. Anybody wants to bullshit said I wasn't. I'm not a big guy, but I was a boxer. I was very good with my hands. Not average, very good. And anybody in prisons that know me, I fought all over the place. In prison, in the street. As you're getting older, you change your life, you mellow out.
Right.
You're not out there like before when a guy talked about you never said nothing, you just went and you killed him. Or you hurt him real bad. Those ain't the days of that anymore. So guys get away with the nonsense talk. But if they, like I tell people, well, if they were that tough, where were they for 50 years when I was out on the street? They had their chance to get at me. Well, why didn't they come near me? So, it's just part of it. And the ego, when you get rid of it, then you can move on with your life. So I got rid of my ego and my life turned.
Ben is going to think I'm flirting with you, but there's a real question here. You mentioned you went back to church, so I'm assuming you're a man of faith.
Yes.
Catholic?
Now Catholic, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're a very good looking man and you're very charismatic. Do you think maybe you were given that so that you can, at this point in your life, do public speaking to help other people and youth and get their attention? Because if you were ugly and shy, you wouldn't be able to do that. And sir, you am not shy. Shut up, Ben. You are not shy.
What are you doing Friday night? No, listen.
Flying to New Jersey, obviously.
No, listen. Ben's cracking up.
It's the shit that's going through my head.
Yeah. Hey,
you asked me what he was doing Friday night. I was thinking soap on a rope.
As a kid, I'm going to tell you something that I've talked about a lot. And you're right, I'm not shy. I was molested by a priest when we were kids. A lot of my friends.
Sorry.
Some of them were raped. That's all right. But I also speak highly of the Catholic Church. So I always talk about people as individuals, not as groups. So he happened to be a bad priest, right? He raped some of my friends. One guy became my enemy, died in prison. He got stabbed up, 100 something times. I know what happened to him. I know what maybe screwed up his life. And unfortunately, it ruined his life. But for me, when I talk about the Catholic Church, I talk about some of the priests that really saved my life. And then there's some bad ones, like any other job or business. Whether I'm a pro-police guy, people are surprised to hear me say that. I'm always talking, up for the police department, and they risk their lives. And anybody, firemen, the veterans, doctors, they put their life on the line with diseases and bullets, and they can go out and never come home. So when I speak about them, I'm speaking as an adult, not as a child, not as an immature kid. I hate the police. I did the wrong thing. They were supposed to arrest me. What's the problem? That's what their job was. I'm not going to hate on them. So, when people ask me, why do you like them? because of that. They risk their lives to do the right thing. It's a bullshit paycheck. They're not getting rich. They're not getting $1 million a year. And, one incident, they lose their life. But going back, when I was talking about the priest and what you're saying about looks, it's relative too, because you can meet the most beautiful person in the world, girl or guy, and they got a shitty personality. No one gives a shit. You might get away with that initially. And once you spend a little time with them, it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're going to go, fuck this person. He's a jerk off. So
but enough about Mario Lopez. Back to you.
Wow. I'm not a big Mario Lopez fan. He smiles too much. Something's wrong with him.
Yes, there
Nobody
is.
can be that happy unless he's on ecstasy. Something's up.
He ain't that happy, my friend. He ain't that happy.
Oh, man.
But, honestly, you just got to be real in the world. And I think real people, like, I'm an individual guy. I'm always talking about, I don't care what anybody does with their personal life. If they're a good person, they're a good person. Who gives a shit what the hell they're doing? As long as they got a good heart, they're nice to people. I think people take it too personal what everybody's doing. Well, mind your business. If you don't like the person, don't stay with them.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
We have about, yeah, that's how we live our lives on this show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ben's having a good time laughing tonight.
Oh, yeah.
That's my job, to make Ben laugh. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
We have about 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm going to give you a scenario. Now, I know the streets have changed. It isn't like it was when you and I were younger. But the streets are still the streets. Right. And there are young men who are still being influenced. Let's assume that the camera you're looking into is 40 or 50 young folks who are on the streets kind of guys. What can you say to them and to us to say, don't follow the crowd, look beyond the surface, see the reality of this, but in your words, and I want to give you a chance to shine here.
He gets paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
I know, but we've got him. So
I have 4 sons. One of them just came home from prison. And
sorry, I'm glad he's home.
Thank you. And what I said to him and what I say to my other sons are, look in the mirror every time you don't like something or like somebody. Look in the mirror and say you like yourself better. Don't make those stupid mistakes, because there's consequences to your action. And while we're sitting here and we're joking, right, this guy's in prison right now, miserable, sitting on some ice cold cot somewhere with, you're locked in a cell like an animal, like a dog. And how can anything you do on the street be worth that? That 1 minute of you losing freedom. I don't like when people say, like, because I did almost 18 years about in and out of prisons. I don't like when somebody says, well, he only did a year. No, it's not only a year. It's day and night of sitting in a prison being miserable. When you could be out at a store, you could be laying in your bed, you could be taking a shower, you could be in a bathtub, you could be just sitting in a chair reading a book, whatever. It's life. You're missing a minute of life. There's no amount of money that's worth you losing your life for 1 second. It's just not. And, was it fun and was it adrenaline rush? Yeah, but they didn't see the part of me suffering. They didn't see me in solitary confinement cells. They didn't see me lose my family. They don't see the stress behind all the joking I do now, because you're still, all those things that happened in the past, you're still paying for it every day. And in some way or another, you got people that are constantly challenging me, even if it's through a computer. It's frustrating because you want to say to them, man, I'd like to bring you back 30 years, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, and show you something and then wake you back up so you can have your life again. And I can prove something to you so you stopped acting like an immature asshole. But, the problem is these guys are insecure. They're egotistical. They try to make themselves more important instead of saying, let me be an example to the next young kid. Because I could be an influencer one way or the other, right? Why would I want to influence them in the wrong way? Why would I want them to suffer what I suffered? Why wouldn't I want them to see and know about the crying that goes on that nobody wants to talk about? Somebody said something about me crying at sentencing one time. I go, yeah, I was crying. What do you think, you're going to embarrass me? I said, of course I was. It was my life. What idiot wouldn't? So, because they don't know what a real tough guy is. To them, it's a fake image. To me,
Right.
I lived it. So I don't got to put on any front. I just talk the way it is so the next kid understands. Listen, don't be stupid. Don't buy into these guys. I was the guy that was out there doing the work. You got guys like Sammy Gravano. He's a little weasel. He hides in another state under a rock, tells everybody he killed 19 people. He shot a gun once. No, he didn't. He didn't do all that killing. He had guys like me doing it. He had, young kids that were too stupid and followed that nonsense. Well, he hid away. And if he's as tough as he says he is, like some of these bosses, why you running? Why you hiding? Why you on the rock somewhere? Then, so when I tell these kids, please listen to me. I want to save your life. I don't make no money out of this. Go enjoy your life. Don't ruin your life. Don't ruin your family's life. Make the best of life. Go eat an ice cream. When you're in jail, you can't do that. And it ain't worth the money. If you're smart enough to hustle in the street, go buy a truck if you're not educated and buy 10 more trucks after you've hustled that truck. Or, anything, get a trade. Just get a job in landscaping. It's not that important. You can make money, own the landscaping company eventually. There's a million things you can do. Just have confidence in yourself. Look in the mirror and say, I like myself. It sounds corny, but it's really the truth. Look in the mirror and say, man, I'm not doing this to myself. I'm not going to let my ego go beat somebody up so I can go back to jail. And this is what they got to do, and really, hopefully I get kids listening, and a lot do. I mean, you're not going to get them all. I mean, I had trouble with my own son getting them to listen.
Right. So we do have a question in the comments from Dave again. He said, brilliant show, guys, but he wanted to ask you, do you miss the life? And is there still mafia in Bensonhurst?
I always tell everybody I miss the life. It was fun. It was adrenaline. It was action. It was exciting. You had all kinds of people around you, movie stars, girls, guys, this, that, champagne. That I do miss. Is it worth it? Would I ever do it again? Absolutely not, because now I'll tell you the depression. I'll tell you about the crying. I'll tell you about the jail. I'll tell you about how it destroys your family. I'll tell you how it ruined my kids. I'll tell you I lost a daughter because of that life. I could go on and on about the reasons that 99.9% against that life. That's why I'm so openly against it, talk against it, talk about the guys. And yeah, it's all those other things. When I say jump out of an airplane, you want adrenaline rushes. I mean, you don't need that nonsense. And it's terrible to know that you hurt a lot of people, killed people. It's nothing that's good comes out of it.
And Dave, Bensonhurst has become almost entirely Asian. So the neighborhood has changed. It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, you got gangsters, but they're like white-collar criminals now. I mean, honestly, with all the cameras, with all the things that are going on, with the technology, you're not getting away with anything. You could do small kind of crimes, I guess, money kind of things, but you're not getting involved with that street in violence. So you might as well just put yourself in jail.
Folks, you can't even do that if you go to prison.
That's right. In jail, there's no more cigarettes. Unless you want to go to Brazil.
And I really don't.
So, we've kind of gone from your beginning through everything you went through to prison to, your epiphany and everything else. Recently, you were appointed to the Englishtown, New Jersey Council. So you hold a seat on the council. I mean, how does that feel?
What's funny? It feels great because people actually now they stop calling me the gangster or the enforcer or the killer. I mean, they do in the media a little bit, but when I'm out, restaurants, bars, wherever I go, comedy shows, people stop and go, "Hey, hello, councilman. How are you?" They introduce me at events as a councilman. It's a nice feeling to know I turned my life completely around. I want to run for Congress. I know I'm doing positive things. I get involved with a lot of people, and I just had a couple of girls on my podcast. For people who don't know, I got a podcast. And I just had Leonard Marshall from the Giants on, the ex-Giant Super Bowl champ. Great human being, great guy. Does a lot of work with kids in the city. And I do a lot of work with people that have addiction problems and rehab and mental illness and whatever way I can help. So, being called these things, and, as a councilman and somebody positive, after all the years of nonsense, and being recognized as somebody that's respected in the community. It's nice. It's nice to be respected.
Being called sir out of respect, not out of fear.
Yes, sir. For sure, Jeff. That's really important.
Yeah. That's I mean, an amazing story, folks. Like John said, he has a podcast. If you want to know more about John and his things, just check the show notes up above or down below, depending on when you're watching this or listening to it later. It's all there. It is all there. I mean, we only touched on the tip. That's all we give you on the show here, folks, is the tip. Sorry. If you want the shaft, you gotta go right to the source.
Call me and we'll talk.
Jeff.
John, I have a question. I know we're almost out of time. You've been so honest and forthcoming, and you name names.
Yeah.
How have you not
Mm-hmm.
had to pay for that honesty? I know the little bit I know about this life, the little bit it's touched my life. I don't discuss it with anyone. I certainly don't mention anybody's names because, I like breathing. How have you escaped anyone's wrath?
Well, I think, when I talk about, like, say, the Bonanno family, the boss and 12 of his top guys, they did all the talking. They did all the ratting. I always say the same thing to the mob. If you got something to say to me, go take care of all your own people that were made guys, bosses all the way down, cooperate. When you start there, then you can come talk to me. So that's first thing. Second thing, I was the guy doing that work. Don't get me wrong. I don't want no problems anymore. I'm very capable of being who. I don't need to make a phone call to nobody. I tell everybody, I'm not bothering you. Stay out of my business. I'll stay out of you guys. Whatever you're doing, I'm not involved. I don't talk about what you do. I don't try to find out what you do. And do the same about me. You guys want to start with guys that cooperate through the mob. I could give you a list of 200 guys off the top of my head. Go take care of them. They swore the oath to your life, not me. So, and I came back here, and like I said, they betrayed me. They know what happened. So that's the ending part of this is they know who betrayed who. They can't switch that time around. I'll sit at a round table with anybody. They can fire away questions and justify what they did to me. But, they can't. They know that. I know that. They're not going to be able to spin because timelines are timelines. And the reality is reality. And again, I wish them all well on that, whatever the hell they're doing. My talks are for kids. So if, I'm trying to get the youth not to follow that nonsense. And, I don't think anybody that loves their kids would ever put them in the street. So if they did, I think something mentally wrong with them.
Well said. Well said.
Well
I just
said.
want real quick to Dave that's been asking a lot of questions. This dude is in the UK. He's in Great Britain. So it's like what? Fucking 3 o'clock in the morning there?
I did a lot of shows in Britain. He knows. So Dave, one of the greatest journalists out there is Trevor McDonald, who I got very friendly with. I did a 2-show part series called Mafia 1 and 2 out there. I was actually the centerfold for GQ also that came out of there, and I was there covering their TV guide out there. I've done a lot of Netflix shows out there with them, and I'm a big fan of the UK. I go out there a lot, actually.
I just want to say thank you to Dave for tuning in. I mean, we do have a lot of people that tune in from all over the world, and I just love when I see different countries, and I'm like, they stayed up till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to fucking watch our dumbasses.
Yeah, that was great.
Like,
it really was.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
So we are just about out of time. So Jeffrey Marks, do you have any last question?
Yes. I have one last question, and it'll give a fast answer. What is your relationship like with your children today, John?
I'm very close with my sons. I always was, but it's hard to be a father from prison or on the run. But now we rebuilt our relationships. My kids have kids, so I try to be around for my grandchildren. I love my kids. I love family. And that's another thing to tell the youth. If you want to be a family man, the street doesn't work with it. So, and God bless everybody really that's out there and have the strength to have self-confidence in yourself to do the right thing in life. Forget the street.
Excellent. I don't have a last question, but I do want to say congratulations on becoming a councilman. Congratulations on turning your life around. You are an idol to a lot of people out there because they may be already down that wrong path saying, well, fuck, this guy did this, and this. And all I did was sling a little bit of dope. I can turn my life around too.
Yeah, they can. Anybody can. I
could be like John. That was more of a cereal commercial, though, right? I want to be like Mike. Yeah. But sorry, I keep reading the chats.
Well, while he's reading the chat, John, you've made a new friend in me. I have great respect for you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
If you're ever on the West Coast, dinner's on me.
I appreciate it. I'll be out there soon. When I do, I'll let you know when I'm out there.
Please do.
Thanks.
Ben. Ben has my contact information.
And John, you're really not that far. I mean, I'm right outside of Boston.
Yeah, I know where you're at. You're in Springfield because I have a couple friends out there.
Oh, no. I'm not in Springfield.
Oh,
that's where the restaurant is.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't go there no more.
Yeah.
I learned my lesson.
Yeah, I'm out in Boston a little bit. I got a friend in the West End, and I got my friend Dean out there. If he sees this, say hello to him. He's a hardworking guy, legitimate guy. So, he's hardworking. Him and his wife, and say hello to them.
John, when you come to Palm Springs, we'll go to the Italian restaurant Sinatra used to go to.
Oh, that's good. All right, for sure. Big Sinatra guy.
As well you should be. I am as well.
So with that, folks, we are a little over time. We don't want to keep John too long because he does have important things happening tonight. As he checks his watch. It's 7 past 8. You got 53 minutes.
I got to walk my dog is what I'm waiting. My dog's waiting for me. He's out there.
So, real quick, John, where do you like interacting with people on social media?
Probably on my Instagram more than most of my other sites. TikTok, I got big followings. On Facebook, I do, but Instagram, I'm mostly on the most. And it's John Alite on there, one word together on Instagram. And DM me, write in, check out my podcast. It's the same, John Alite. So I try to answer as many as I can.
Excellent. And folks, like I said, if you want to know more about John, just check the show notes up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. And all his information's there. Mr. Jeffrey Mark, where can they find you on the social medias?
Well, you see how my name is spelled right there at the bottom there? I'm on Facebook or Jeffrey Mark Showbiz, all one word, on Instagram. And I answer everybody. And I hope John has me as a guest on his podcast. We can talk about my sobriety and how I turned my life around.
I really like to have that, Jeff. Without a doubt. It'll help so many people.
All you have to do is ask. It's all yours.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can have Mr. Jeffrey Mark on your podcast, but you have to ask him about Freddie Mercury. And you have to ask him about John Lennon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. John Lennon. I got to wear my John Lennon glasses next time we go on.
Okay.
All right.
It's not a happy story, but it's an interesting one.
Well,
yeah,
we'll go with the interesting part for now. We'll try to keep it happy, everybody laughing.
Right.
We'll do Freddie Mercury after that. That'll keep people laughing.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good.
But again, we want to thank John for coming out, taking time out of his busy schedule to
thank you, guys.
About his story and everything behind it. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally blown away. Congratulations again. And to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do so people like us can come up here and do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We're out of here.
Have a happy, everybody.
See you guys.
So